Welcome to GS1 YouTube channel. With me here is Peter Otieno, our CEO, and we are going to be discussing about the upcoming meeting on the healthcare, and Mr. Otieno will take us through that. So yes, Mr. Otieno, please, can you please brief us about GS1 Kenya?
Thank you, Jacqueline. Nice to have you here for this interview. First and foremost, let me try and explain what GS1 is all about and what do we do in the healthcare. GS1 stands for One Global Standard. Basically, it's an organization formed of two different companies or two different organizations, formerly EAN, European Article Numbering in Europe, and UPC, United Product Council in the United States, forming up a traceability company known as One Global Standard. So we stand as GS1. We began all the way in 1974, basically in retail, trying to figure out how much or what's the movement of products from one area to another area. With time, healthcare has become one of the critical aspects of human beings in terms of our safety in the whole world. Everybody wants to know what kind of drug they're using. Are they efficient? Are they the efficacy is right? Are they being manufactured by the right organizations? Are they not counterfeited? And are they of good quality? And is it, as they mentioned, the price right as well? So for this, GS1 Kenya came into play in terms of trying to figure out how best we can put all this into perspective where everybody can understand what they're being treated with. So one aspect of GS1 in terms of healthcare standards is trying to track and trace the sources of the products and finally where they're being used. This reduces the counterfeits and reduces any other products which could be introduced in the supply chain by unscrupulous practitioners. Two is basically for the patient safety. And when you talk of patient safety, we are looking at both the patients, the caregivers, and the infrastructure which involves in treating the patients. All this is something which also requires tracking and tracing in terms of how patients are being taken care of. The nurses, the doctors, you name it, the clinicians and the technicians as well. All this being done in terms of trying to create a standard, a good, acceptable standard worldwide, so that at least if I'm being treated here in Kenya, that should be the same way somebody is being treated in another part of the world.
Okay, yes, Mr. Otieno, just to ask on that standard healthcare, your company is coming up with a training about patient safety and training on all that. What is this patient safety you're talking about, and how is it going to benefit the participants and as well as the organizations they are representing?
Thank you again, Jacqueline. The main aspect or the main topic or the main agenda we're looking at here is the patient safety. And when I talk about patient safety, what do you have in mind? First and foremost, if a patient works in a hospital, basically, most likely they will be incapacitated. They could be either under heavy pain or they could be not aware of themselves. And in that case, they are trying to put their life under the hands of somebody else. Now, what you're trying to say is that GS1 is not really a medic. We are not in a medical field where we could say, do it this way so that the patients feel safe. What we are trying to say is that all the steps which are being done in any hospital or in any dispensary or in any healthcare facility must be documented well. And if they're documented, they must actually be able to be shared both with the patient and also with the caregiver. And all this must find a way of actually giving some sort of reliable data or source of how they're being treated. So what you're talking about here is, first and foremost, we're looking at three aspects. The first aspect is the procurement of the medicine coming into the facilities. Were they procured in the right way? And if they're procured in the right way, could they be identified they're coming from which source? And if you could identify they're coming from which source, are they of the right efficacy? Have they been given the clear go-ahead by the authorities under which they're being monitored, whether they're from the manufacturing side or from the receiving countries. If all this has been done, this can actually be documented in a way which is easy for everybody to understand and know without any more expense being involved. This is one aspect of standard GS1 is talking about. How do you identify these criteria and how do you capture them, and then how do you share them? Two, while the patient is in the hospital, there are several steps we believe they'll go through, possibly from the triage, or if there are accidents, from the accident point of view, they'll go to triage, from the triage, they'll go to where the consultation, where they'll see the doctor, and then from the doctor, they could either go to the wards or they could go home, and when they're in the ward, they will actually have several nurses or several caregivers coming to attend to them, and of course there will be some drugs being monitored for them. Now, all this can be actually a challenge if they're not well documented. This is where GS1 comes in and say, you know what, let's start this process from the beginning, and by giving it a special unique code which is attached to that patient. And every time the patient is being treated or a doctor is being prescribing a certain medicine or anything is being done to them, is actually loaded into that coding. And at the end of the day, this is some code which can be shared worldwide, can be shared by external pharmaceutical outlets or any other institution should they fall sick outside their jurisdiction. This can easily be traced, and this is what we are trying to talk about, and is what we are trying to find out. How best can GS1 standard in healthcare be taught to the caregivers, and they put in place, or they merge with their own system of doing things and make it much more universal to everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chena. So, what message can you tell to the Kenyans who have not just taken that step to join GS1 in healthcare field? What message can you pass to them, especially now we have this upcoming training on the healthcare or the patient safety?
Thank you again. I think it's a very good question. First and foremost, we have several criteria we're looking at here. We also have all manufacturers who are actually producing medicine in the country. Majority of them are our members, and therefore they have unique codes to the products they're using. Two, we are also trying to pass this message to the caregivers especially. It would be very good to have a system which I think you can rely on. Already, one part of it in terms of the drugs and the medical devices which are coming into this country or are being produced in this country have already been identified by the GS1 standards. It will be good for you to have this in your system with the same coding already from the source, leaving or giving you a better control of your system by actually avoiding errors by you introducing new coding as the process goes on. I will also encourage Kenyans, especially those who are walking to the hospitals, that they will also good for them to ask where are the materials that are being treated from coming from? Can the people giving or treating them verify to them that these actually are the drug they're talking about and they know the sources? If this is not possible, then it will be good for them to demand, you know what, it's my right to demand to know where are the sources of these products or who produced what. And if it's going to be used in my body, it's going to be prescribed towards me and being injected in my body, it is my right to actually have that information. So at least I will also be assured, yes, this is a good thing. I can actually deny and say, no, I'm not so sure about the source of that product. This can only happen when we all come together and say, you know what, let's have a universal system of doing things which actually is dependable and is actually been tested and tried elsewhere and elsewhere outside Kenya, and everybody can see, yes, I think this is the right thing for us. If all this is done, then I think we'll have the right system of treating ourselves every time we walk in a hospital or a dispenser.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chena, for your time. We really appreciate what you have told us. I would advise Kenyans to take note on that, and please find your time to come and get the training and to get to know better what as GS1 we do. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jake.
Yeah.